Thank you all for being here with me this afternoon for our introduction to the A Day in the Life of the Indian River Lagoon program. My name is Missy Weiss. I'm the Director of Citizen Science and Education at the Ocean Research and Conservation Association, or ORCA. And I am helping coordinate this year's A Day in the Life program with our education specialist, Courtney Brooks. So today is all about introducing you to this program, letting you know whether you're a teacher or an environmental partner, a little bit more about your roles and responsibilities, and just kind of give you an overview of what this program entails. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So, if you're not familiar with ORCA, we are a nonprofit. We were founded in 2005. Our headquarters is in Vero Beach, which is in Indian River County, but we really serve the entire Indian River Lagoon watershed. So, from Volusia County all the way down to Palm Beach County. And our mission is really about protecting and restoring the aquatic ecosystems and the species those ecosystems sustain. And we do this through innovative technologies, science-based conservation action, and community education and outreach. So we're really an applied science research organization. And the way that we try to uphold this mission is in four major ways. We do this through, like I said, our innovative technology. So we have real-time water monitoring devices known as Kilroys. Those Kilroys are positioned throughout the Indian River Lagoon and are able to analyze the water every couple of minutes for about 16 to 18 different parameters. And so you can access that data set on our website at any time. And you can even utilize this data in your classroom if you're looking for your students to experience large data sets. We also uphold our mission through our applied science research. And so under that, we really look at, we have two major umbrellas. So we focus in on ecotoxicity, but also One Health. We do this through our citizen science program. So in 2019, we started to incorporate members of the community, people of all ages, backgrounds, ethnicities in our science research. And so we currently have 4 programs or projects that people in the community can participate in. And all the while, we know that it's important to be able to disseminate and share information about the data that we're collecting. And so we do have an education program, of which A Day in the Life really bridges our citizen science as well as our education program. And so our educator will go into the classrooms, will participate in after-school programs, summer programs, and that really is a way to be able to better inform students, again, of all ages, about the importance of protecting and restoring the Indian River Lagoon, as well as sharing the data and information that we collect at ORCA. So, A Day in the Life is really focused more on citizen science. And one of those citizen science programs that is incorporated is our A Day in the Life. So last year, we started our A Day in the Life of Lake Worth Lagoon, and that was leveraged off of the success that our Day in the Life of the Indian River Lagoon program has had for the last 7 years. So on October 9th of 2025, it will be our 8th annual A Day in the Life of the Indian River Lagoon. And so if you've never participated in this program before, then I really often describe it as it's a large scale community research program or citizen science project that involves schools, community partners, environmental organizations coming together to assist students in collecting scientific data about a specific location along the Indian River Lagoon on the same day, year after year after year. And so what happens on this day is we collect a snapshot or environmental snapshot of what our specific sampling location looks like on this day in time, and being able to compare that over time. So we have the last 8 years worth of data to be able to compare to as we continue moving forward. And so essentially what happens is that students from Volusia County all the way down to Palm Beach County will descend upon the Indian River Lagoon to their specific adopted sampling location, and they will all collect the same information about their location. So we're all collecting the same data in the same way, so that when we do acquire this information or this data, we can make comparisons. So students are collecting water quality, they're conducting biological inventories, They are analyzing their sample location and the physical conditions of their spot. And the idea, again, is that these students, in collaboration with these professionals in our area, these environmental professionals, are able to work together to better understand the health of their specific location. And so we've tried to make this program as easy as we can, but as you can see, it's quite complex. So let's kind of take a step back and let's just talk about why we think that this program is important for students, again, of all ages to participate in. So our goals and objectives of a day in the life are as follows. One is that we want people to have a better appreciation for and knowledge of our local waterways, and in this case, the Indian River Lagoon. We can't protect a location that we don't really know that much about or that we don't have a personal connection with. And so this program allows students and people to connect with our local waterway. We also want people to have a better understanding of the environmental health and the environmental stressors that are impacting the health of the lagoon. So, students and people, we all know about, or we hear about some of the stressors that are impacting the lagoon and why the Indian River Lagoon may not be as healthy as it once was. But why? We always want to take the opportunity to connect Floridians with nature. We know the importance of that. We want to prepare students to become better stewards of our local waterways and their natural resources. And so we believe this program is one way of doing that. And we always want to provide as many opportunities as we can for students and adults to become active citizen science, to actively participate in collecting research about the Indian River Lagoon. And at the end of the day, a day in the life is the ultimate community collaboration. We have over 50 schools, over 80 community partners coming together, all for the really about better understanding the Indian River Lagoon. And so it's centered around this waterway. And so that is what a day in the life is all about. So a little bit of history. I mentioned that we're going to be celebrating or participating in our 8th annual A Day in the Life of the Indian River Lagoon. It was started back in 2018. This is not a program unique to the Indian River Lagoon. There are other A Day in the Life programs throughout the country and even throughout the world. But this is ORCA collaborates or coordinates the A Day in the Life of the Indian River Lagoon and Lake Worth Lagoon. So over its course, we've seen nearly 10,000 participants. In 2023, we had over 2,000 participants engaged in a day in the life, monitoring the sites that you see here on the left-hand side. Last year, 2024, we had about 1,400 participants, which you think to yourself, well, why did you go down? Well, unfortunately, the hurricane last year hit exactly on a day in the life's date. And so we had to move it. And so the fact that we still were able to get such great participation despite having to move that date because of the hurricane is pretty successful. And so I've already mentioned the fact that over the course of this program, we've had over 50 sampling locations. We really try to keep the same sites monitored year after year after year by the same schools and community partners or homeschool groups. But we've had great success, and that's because of all of you. So the way that we structure a day in the life so that we're all doing the same thing in the same way is through our A Day in the Life educator packet. So on our website, teamorca.org, if you were to go to citizen science, you'll find A Day in the Life is one of those programs listed. And when you click on that link, there is a resources tab. And that resources tab has, I think in the first spot, the educator packet. This again is kind of the Bible for the day. It's what keeps everybody organized and doing everything in the same order of operations as well as following standard operating procedures. And the way that we've structured a day in the life is by having 5 different stations. Now, those stations are a water quality or chemical station, a biological station, physical station, site description, and documentation. Now, the beauty of a day in the life is that the timing of it is flexible. So I am very cognizant of the fact that busing can sometimes be a limitation and will limit the amount of time that you have to participate in a day in the life. So if you have a very short amount of time, then you may not be able to have your students rotate through each of these 5 stations. You may only have enough time for your students to get off the bus, be broken up into their stations, which was done ahead of time, collect that data, get back on the bus, and go. But you'll know, because you would have planned, that those students will know exactly what they need to do in how they need to do it, and they'll be able to accumulate or collect all of the data that you need. Or you may be fortunate enough where you're able to have a situation where you can be there nearly the whole day or a half a day, which then would allow you to have your students rotate through as many of these stations as they possibly can. So I don't really care how long you stay there or whether you are able to rotate through all of them or just be able to get your class to collect the data for those 5 stations and that's it. I just care about the fact that it needs to be done on the same day, which is October 9th of this year for a day in the life of the Indian River Lagoon. Now, if you're on this webinar for Lake Worth Lagoon, it's a different date and we can talk about that in a second. So let me kind of walk you through in addition to the education packet, what other resources we have for you to use to help prepare you for your A Day in the Life experience. So on the resources tab, not only do we have the educator packet, but we also have training videos. So if you want to be able to take a couple of minutes of your class to be able to show your students how to appropriately measure currents, because you want to be able to do that for the day in the life, and you're not 100% sure if the educator packet is clear enough, you can watch this 1 minute and 30-second video on how to measure the current. Or if you want to show them how to use a refractometer because they've never used one before, you can show the 3-minute video that we've prepared for you. So we have these training videos for you to utilize. We also will have step-by-step guides for how to use the calorimeters, and I'll get into that in a little bit. We provide equipment bins to every group, so we never want equipment to be a limitation. So in that equipment bin, we'll have things like your sediment core, your thermometers, your refractometers, a seine net if you need it, all of your nutrient kits, as well as alkalinity kits, and so on and so forth. Or perhaps you're an environmental partner already has a lot of that equipment, or they have more sophisticated equipment like probes. You're welcome to use those YSI or probes in replacement of what we provide in the equipment bin if that provides more accurate and reliable data. We also will provide assistance with coordination. And so we like to help find schools, environmental partners, or environmental partners, schools to work with. So we kind of help with coordination. We also will provide a media kit to all of the partners. So again, we're saying the same information in the same way. We do invite media to the different locations if that's appropriate and permitted. And we will constantly kind of keep reminding you of what you should be doing, when you should be doing it, and how you should be doing it if that's a need for you. So we want to be of assistance. So let me kind of take a step back and walk you through in detail what you're expected to have your students do in throughout the 5 stations. So number one is our water chemistry. So obviously, if we're learning about the Indian River Lagoon, we want our students to have the opportunity to measure the different water chemistry parameters. And so the way that I suggest, or I've had success doing this particular station, is I would break my group of students up into 2 subgroups. So let's say I had 10 students in my group. I would have already delegated 5 of those students are going to be in group 1A, and 5 of those students are going to be in group 1B. And each of those subgroups are going to have different tasks, as you can see on the screen here. So for example, group 1A, they would be asked to measure the temperature of the water, the salinity or how salty the water is, the pH using our Lamont kits, dissolved oxygen using the Lamont kit, turbidity, and then collecting water to be later analyzed for fecal coliform. Group 1B would have already practiced and would know how to measure phosphate, nitrate, alkalinity, and will collect a water sample for glyphosate. Those are done using these really cool little mini spectrophotometers that you can see on the screen here. We provide little flip books of how to use them, but they can sometimes be intimidating. So again, you've heard me say it, I think at least twice so far, is you want to practice utilizing these pieces of equipment before you get out there on October 9th. Nitrate is another test. It's optional. It's usually recommended for high school or middle school schools, or even the undergraduate, like Indian River State College participates. They would be it would be appropriate for them to measure that, but it's quite sophisticated and there's a lot of different parts, and so we've made that optional. Now, one thing you may see on the screen right now is in red, it says high priority. So I mentioned flexibility a couple of minutes ago because, again, not every school has the luxury of being there for a half a day or a full day. But if you only have a shortened amount of time and you don't know if you're going to be able to do all the stations, then we ask that you prioritize the water chemistry. This is really important data. And when we talk about the environmental health of a location, a lot of these parameters, if not all of them, obviously are really important about better understanding it. And so we want our teams and our groups to measure the water chemistry. So this is station number 1. And again, that educator manual will walk you through how you want to measure each of these tests, what tools, what equipment, and so on and so forth. So the packet is giving you your standard operating procedures of how to do this. Station 2 is where we're collecting biological surveys. So there are 2 biological surveys that we ask our teams to collect. One is an aquatic biological survey. So we want to know what are the invertebrates and fish that are found in our specific sampling site. And the way that we can measure that is either a seine net, like in the picture here, or in some cases, a cast net. So not every location is treated the same, because if you're working off of a bulkhead, a seine net might not be an option for you, but a cast net might be. And so when we ask our teams to measure what are the invertebrates and fish in our location, we ask you to do at least 3 seine pulls. Now, if your teams are rotating, then you might have a situation where if each group is pulling the seine net 3 times, you might have a total of 15 different seine pulls. Well, I want you to make sure that you are collecting the data from the first 3, because that way we're really capturing what's happening in that area, as opposed to having students kind of going in and out of the water, scaring the fish or disturbing the area. So you would want to make sure that you are recording the data from the first 3 seine pulls. You're also going to ask your students to help you collect a habitat associated survey. And so all that is taking a moment and looking around your sampling site to observe the other living things in that spot. So for example, maybe I see ospreys or butterflies or fire ants. Maybe I'm seeing invasive lizards or our native lizard. And so I'm documenting what we are seeing at that specific location. Sometimes we're also documenting things like, oh, I saw a dolphin. Clearly, you're not catching that in your seine net, but you're seeing it. And so you would want to document that in this particular station under Habitat Associated Survey. This also is a high priority station. So again, if you're limited on time or resources, this is where I really want you to focus your efforts, because it's the first 2 stations where a lot of the meat and potatoes of a day in the life are found. This is where we want you to focus your efforts. Station number 3, also really important, but it's the physical conditions of your sampling site. And so we're asking our citizen scientists to look at tidal change, so measuring the tide, current direction and speed, if that is something that is experienced at your site, cloud cover and air temperature, as well as wind direction and speed. So you're getting those physical conditions of your sampling site. Station 4 is where we're kind of honing in on our site specifically by drawing a map of our sampling site. So students are kind of taking a step back, using their power of observation and drawing or sketching their site. Are there any outfalls? Is there impervious surfaces that might be causing an issue with erosion or influences of pollution? They're going to be collecting sediment cores and getting their hands in those sediment cores and looking for life or evidence of life. Do we have areas of the sediment that are anoxic, meaning devoid of oxygen, or are we finding ones that are sandy and full of life? All of that helps us better understand what our sampling site looks like, as well as its overall health. And then the final station is the documentation station. And so this is the station where maybe some of your students have a keen interest in the arts or photo or film. They're able to be creative. And so oftentimes these are the students that are tasked with taking photos of our sampling location, photos of all the students in action collecting data. They might take a moment and interview their environmental partner. Hey, why are you here today? What do you do for a living? Can you share why the Indian River Lagoon is important? Because all of these photos and film and videos can all be used in different ways. Minimally, it's being used to document the organisms found in the seine net because we want to make sure that we are labeling things correctly. And not mislabeling organisms. Or if we have a question of what something is, that photo will allow us to help you answer that question. But our photos and film from the day can also be used in other creative ways or extension activities. So, for example, you could create dichotomous keys so that the group next year who does a day in the life will be able to help identify some of these organisms because you'll create these dichotomous keys for your guides or codes. We've had students create murals inspired by a day in the life. We've also had groups create documentaries about their experience of the day in the life or the Indian River Lagoon and Lake Worth, and then submit that to local contests like Youth Making Ripples, where you can win awards and prizes for your experience participating in this program. So Station 5 is very much creative in nature. Minimally, again, the responsibility of our documenters are to take photos of those animals or plants found in the seine net. But again, your creativity is what will kind of limit this particular station. Now, there are some groups that eliminate this completely. They say, I don't want my students tasked with this. And so they might just assign a handful of students to do this role, and they stay in that position the whole time. But again, that is really up to you. So, in a nutshell, this is kind of what we're asking our student citizen scientists to help measure: the overall water chemistry, better understanding the biology in our location or the biota, measuring the physical conditions, as well as better understanding our site as a whole. And it doesn't really stop there. So, the wonderful thing about a day in the life is that we like to partner environmental professionals in our area with local schools or homeschool groups or even groups of adults who are participating in the data collection, because there's something really beautiful and wonderful about that collaboration, because it gives students a chance to see real scientists in action. And there's this really fun activity that you can do with students where you ask them, draw what you think a scientist look like. And a lot of times there's a very typical, stereotypical viewpoint of what a scientist look like. But that's not always the case, right? And so our students are able to interact, work side by side by these professionals collecting valuable data information about the Indian River Lagoon. But it's also a chance for our partners to share what they do and the research that they conduct on the Indian River Lagoon. So, for example, if you are an organization who installs living shorelines or works on mangrove restoration or seagrass restoration or even sea turtle research, I would make sure I take a moment and share that with my students because they're getting to see science in action and what they could be if they choose to pursue a pathway or career in science. We also like to include other citizen science projects in a day in the life. And so the first year we actually partnered with Florida Tech. They asked us to collect water samples at each of our sampling locations, and then we provided that water to them, and they measured eDNA on that water sample for the presence or absence of bull sharks. And so that was a cool way to incorporate more research and science in the day. ORCA asks each partner to collect a little water sample where we then analyze it for the herbicide glyphosate. And so we incorporate another citizen science program in top of a day in the life. And so if you are another environmental organization and you're like, hey, this might be a really great opportunity for us to ask these partners from Volusia to Palm Beach to do this, then feel free to reach out. And another extension opportunity is, and this is really helpful if you have a large group of students, is that you can embed some stewardship, like a cleanup. So when I have really big teams participate, I often suggest that they break them up into two groups. One group is going to do a cleanup or some kind of activity in one area, while the other group is doing a day in the life. They might have snack or lunch, and then they switch. And so that way you're not having 100 different students doing a day in the life with 20 students in a station. You're able to kind of make it smaller and streamlined. So definitely take advantage of the incredible talent that our environmental partners in our area are able to provide for this day. And then, this data is accessible to anybody. And so if you want to use a day in the life data in your classroom or interested in it, then I highly encourage you to reach out. You can incorporate a day in the life data to create graphs like the ones that you see here on the screen, where this is particularly looking at glyphosate concentration by county, as well as glyphosate concentration over year. And this is just one way that you can analyze this data, but you can also simplify it with pie charts or biodiversity. And so again, there's lots of ways to utilize this data. Some other ways that you can incorporate a day in the life data if you want to kind of take this program to the next level and not just use it as a field opportunity is that ORCA provides free supporting lessons to participating schools. We don't have enough time for our education specialists to provide free lessons to everybody, but we do offer 5 free lessons. 2 of them need to be done before a day in the life, and then 3 of them are done anytime after a day in the life until mid-December. And so those 3 lessons after a day in the life incorporate data from the day, and they also support state learning standards. And so that is something that we can offer as a way to incorporate the data into your curriculum. We also welcome students to use it for science fair or student research projects. Again, I mentioned documentaries or school murals. And then in May of every year, ORCA offers a data jam competition where we provide citizen science data sets. A day in the life is one of them. And we ask students to analyze that data and interpret it. But instead of writing about what they're finding, we ask them to create works of art that tell the story of that data through art, artistic expression, as opposed to writing. And so that happens in May, but that clearly incorporates some of the data. And then I've mentioned that this is a national program. And so I know that some other A Day in the Life programs have had students create JIS models over time, as well as incorporate some DNA analysis into the work. And so if you're interested in kind of exploring that, I'm happy to have that conversation another time. And so let's kind of get to the logistics. So what is it required of you as a teacher or a homeschool parent or as an environmental partner? So let's do logistics for a little bit. So if you are an educator on this particular call, then your primary responsibilities and roles include this. Number one, we want usable and reliable data. So a day in the life while it is obviously a field trip, it's not one of those warm and fuzzy field trips where there isn't purpose. The students have a responsibility and a role and accountability to collect usable and reliable data. And as the educator, you are meant to guide them and allow them to practice. You do have the flexibility in timing, location, and the number of students that participate. You need minimally about 5 different people to participate, and I've had groups as large as about 120 participate, but anywhere in that spectrum is fine. You choose, obviously, the number of students that you want to participate, but with that, you want to think about, well, if I'm bringing 100 students, I want to make sure that I'm picking a sample location that is safe to accommodate that number of students. So we want to strategically pick sample locations that make sense for what we do. You're also responsible for any kind of student waiver. So that probably would come anyway with being able to take students off campus, but you're responsible for that student waiver, making sure you're following all the appropriate student teacher ratios, as well as having a photo release. We love to be able to share your photos. And so it's always recommended that you incorporate ORCA onto that photo release, even if you're creating a special one for the day, because that's a great way to share how your students did, highlight the program, and everybody really looks to see their students in action on that day. So we would love to be a part of that photo release. You're also responsible for arranging your transportation. And so if you live in Indian River County, we have a specific grant that provides stipend for your transportation, but we don't have that for the other counties right now. And so transportation is on you. And then another role or responsibility is make sure you're being a good communicator with your environmental partner. They're meant to help you and make your day be more seamless and less chaotic. And so the way that you can make a day in the life smoother and more succinct is by communicating really well with your environmental partner, such as, what station can you help lead? So can you lead one of the stations? Can you lead the water quality station because you work in the water quality field? Do you have any extra volunteers that you can bring on this day? Do you have any equipment that you can share? What time can you be there? And so on and so forth. So just communicating with your partner is key. And just to kind of give you a perspective, I participated in a day in the life way back in, I don't know, 2015 or so up in New York for a day in the life of the Peconic Estuary, and I served as an environmental partner. So I have that perspective of what an environmental partner can do to help, but also what we need to be able to support you. As the educator, you're also responsible for making sure you know what that educator packet says and you've practiced with your students ahead of time. So as I mentioned, we have an equipment bin that we will drop off ahead of time that you can use to practice. In that kit, the hardest part is the Lamont water quality kit, that measures dissolved oxygen and pH. It's not hard in that it really is just a color change, but again, you want to practice with your students. It also will include the checkers or little mini spectrophotometers that measure the nutrients and alkalinity. We give you enough reagent to practice, so do that. And then assess your equipment. Every school, every partner is different. Some people don't even need my equipment bin, and some people need everything, and that's okay. So, what do you have? If you are an educator, do you have clipboards? Because while they're not required, they certainly are helpful. Can you provide pencils or colored pencils for the sample site? Will you be bringing your first aid kit? All of that is things that you need to assess of whether or not you have it or not. And if you need it, either communicate with your environmental partner or reach back up to us to see if we have it. It's also extremely highly recommended that someone in your group has the aquatic species collection permit. So if it's not the teacher, then your environmental partner should have the aquatic species collection permit. You can get that fairly easily. So if you just go to this website here, the FIMSI website, right on their homepage, it tells you when the next workshop is. They're now virtual, which is so convenient. And the next one I know that they're hosting is September 9th at 6 p.m. It's virtual. And these permits allow you to seine in the waterway. And if you ever plan to collect any of those critters to bring back to a tank at school or have, then you need that collection permit. And so it's recommended that someone on your team has that. And then we also encourage you, if you are a new partner or if you need a refresher, to register for one of our field trainings. So these are conducted on Saturdays or Sundays in the months of August and September. We do one in each county, as you can see here on the screen. The locations are to be determined because we literally just hired our educator the other day, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page. But the time is usually about 8:30 to 11:30. And this is a way for us to literally run through the program with you as if we were the teacher or the partner coordinating the day. And so they're very helpful, and you can ask all kinds of questions. There's lots of tips and tricks provided during those field trainings. So I highly recommend that if you can attend, you do that. And if you do want to sign up for one of these field trainings, then just reach out to me and let me know, and I'll make sure I send out that registration link to you. So that's kind of the roles and responsibilities of the teacher or the homeschool parent or the co-op parent. The environmental partner, I've alluded to a lot of this already, and some of it is the same as the educator. But again, your role is to help these student citizen scientists collect usable and reliable data. A lot of us do this all the time anyway for our jobs, and so we want to make sure that the students are doing just as a good job as we would be doing if we were there collecting the data. You also will want to be able to offer your assistance to lead one of the stations. So a lot of the times the teachers will ask us to lead either the biological survey station because maybe they're not comfortable with seining, or the water chemistry station just because of experience. That's not always the case, but that seems to be where a lot of the times as a partner we kind of get asked to the post that we get asked to be at. If you have other volunteers or staff that can join you, then the recommendation would be to have them positioned at the other stations because you want to make sure, whether you're a teacher or an environmental partner, that there's an adult at each of the stations, whether it's a parent volunteer, an environmental partner, another teacher, but someone's there helping the students along. Also, as the environmental partner, you want to share. So if you have a really good sample site suggestion or a site that you work at often, then you would want to be able to recommend that to your teacher. If you have equipment, obviously we ask that you share it. Any cool field guides? There's one on our resources page or a couple of them, but maybe you have a really comprehensive one for your area. Feel free to bring that. And then again, any volunteers, extra hands are always very helpful. And again, you need to coordinate with your teacher. So the last thing you want to do is just show up on October 9th and not know what you're doing. It doesn't feel good for anybody. And so coordinate, take the time, talk, meet after school one day and just plan. So what's next? I've kind of laid out the overview of the program. Hopefully it resonated that there's lots of flexibility built into the program, but the two most valuable and important stations are Station 1 and Station 2. That there is a decent amount of responsibility, not only placed on our educators, but also on our students, right? Making sure that they're collecting that data that we can use. And so the next step is, if you're still like, yeah, this is something I want to provide to my students or my homeschoolers, or this is something that I want to be a part of as an environmental partner, then let us know that you want to participate. So the way that you do that is just emailing me. So again, my name is Missy. In a couple of weeks, we'll have Courtney joining us, but just let us know. If you work with a school all the time or an environmental partner and you guys have a really good relationship and you want to work together again, feel free to reach out to each other first and then reach out to me and say, hey, I'm with the Brevard Zoo. I always work with this school. We'd love to work together and monitor this site. And that way I can let you know, great, that's awesome. That site is either taken or not taken. And so communication is primarily done via email. And so that's a good place to ask questions, or where you'll find us sending emails to everybody, kind of letting them know, okay, we're 2 weeks out. You need to make sure you've done this, this, and this. So I do recognize that I talk fast, and I also may have said a lot. And so I will offer you the opportunity to either put a question in the chat, or you're welcome to unmute yourself. And let's talk a little bit more about a day in the life. I'm just reading some of the chat remarks. And so, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're a small private school or a large public school or just a homeschool co-op or even a group of adults from a local HOA. If you want to help participate and collect data, we welcome it. Just shoot me an email and let me know where you are, what grade or ages of the students that you're looking to have participate. And I'll kind of put some feelers out to some of the environmental partners to see if they have the opportunity or ability to help. I will say that the limiting factor for us for this program has been environmental partners. And so if you are a group here that's attending on this call right now, where you have multiple people who are able to participate and you guys can divide and conquer, that would be a great way to just influence more students. So just kind of putting that out there, but just email me and let me know if that you'd like to participate. Anyone else? Yes. Awesome. Yeah. So I'm glad that someone on the chat just was able to check out some of the website resources. Thank you for acknowledging that. It took a lot of time putting those together, but we've learned over the years from our partners what they need. And so if there is anything else that you think would be helpful, please let us know. We're always willing to update or revise or add to those resources. But that is a good place to start if you're a new partner, is check out the website. I'll kind of stick around for a while. If you want to talk offline or a bit privately, please feel free to reach out via email, mweiss@teamorca.org. I appreciate all of you for taking the time this afternoon to learn more about a day in the life, and I hope to be working with all of you very, very soon. So thank you.